"You're nothing but dead weight, old man. Nobody wants you around anymore." Those were the exact words my son Michael spoke to me as he stood in my living room, surrounded by moving boxes. I'm Frank Patterson, 75 years old, and after 4 decades of factory work and raising my boy alone, I never imagined my golden years would begin with such bitter betrayal. Let me take you back to where this all started, because understanding my journey might help you see how a father's love can sometimes blind him to his own child's greed. It was 1978, when my wife Sarah died in that car accident. Michael was only 8 years old, and suddenly I found myself a single father working double shifts at the Ford plant in Detroit. Those were the hardest years of my life, not because of the physical labor, but because I could see the pain in my little boy's eyes every time he asked when Mummy was coming home. I made a promise to Sarah's grave that October evening I would give Michael everything I never had growing up. My own father had abandoned us when I was 12, leaving my mother to struggle with 3 kids and no support. I swore that would never happen to my son. The sacrifices began immediately. While other men my age bought new trucks or spent weekends fishing, I was working overtime every Saturday and Sunday. My hands were permanently stained with motor oil. My back ached constantly. But every extra dollar went toward Michael's future. When he wanted to play Little League, I sold my motorcycle to buy his equipment. When he needed a computer for school, I took out a loan I could barely afford. But Michael was bright, brilliant, actually. His teachers constantly praised his intelligence, and I felt so proud walking into those parent conferences. "Your son has real potential, Mr. Patterson," they'd say. "He could go far with the right opportunities." I made sure he had every opportunity, even if it meant eating nothing but beans and rice for weeks at a time. High school brought new expenses. SAT prep courses, college application fees, a reliable car so he could get to his part-time job. I remember the day we visited the University of Michigan campus. Michael's eyes lit up, seeing those historic buildings and hearing about the business program. The tuition was staggering, more money than I'd ever seen at one time, but I figured out a way. I took a second mortgage on our small house, cashed in some of my 401k early, and applied for every parent loan available. "Don't worry about the money, son," I told him as we sat in the financial aid office. "Your education is the most important investment I'll ever make." Michael graduated with honors and landed a job at a downtown investment firm. I was so proud watching him in his crisp suits, carrying that leather briefcase I'd bought him as a graduation gift. Finally, all those years of sacrifice were paying off. My boy was going to have the life I'd always dreamed of giving him. But success changed Michael in ways I didn't recognize at first. The calls became less frequent. Sunday dinners turned into monthly obligations, then quarterly visits. When he did come by, he seemed impatient, constantly checking his phone, eager to leave. I told myself he was just busy building his career, that this was normal for young professionals. Then came Jessica, his girlfriend from the suburbs. She was polite enough to my face, but I could see the way she looked around my modest home, the worn furniture, the outdated kitchen, the working-class neighborhood. During one particularly uncomfortable dinner, I overheard her whisper to Michael, "When are you going to help him move somewhere more appropriate? More appropriate." As if the home where I'd raised my son, where we'd shared countless memories, wasn't good enough for their refined tastes. Michael's visits became even rarer after they got engaged. When I wasn't invited to the engagement party, he explained it was just a small gathering of Jessica's family and close friends. When the wedding invitation arrived, I was assigned a table in the back corner, far from the bridal party, seated with people I'd never met. But I swallowed my hurt feelings. This was Michael's day, and I wanted him to be happy. The real change started about 3 years ago. Michael began asking about my finances, innocent questions at first. "Dad, are you managing your retirement savings okay? Do you need help with investments?" He offered to help me optimize my portfolio. Said he had connections who could get me better returns. Looking back, I should have been suspicious. But this was my son, the boy I'd sacrificed everything for. When he suggested I give him power of attorney to make financial decisions on my behalf, he presented it as a way to protect me from scams and poor investment choices. "You're getting older, Dad. These financial predators target seniors. Let me handle the complicated stuff so you can just enjoy your retirement." I signed those papers without reading them carefully. Michael was a professional, after all. He worked in finance. Who better to trust with my money than my own son? For months, everything seemed fine. Michael would give me updates about my investments, show me official-looking statements on his laptop. The numbers looked good, better than good, actually. He told me my retirement fund was growing faster than ever before. But then, strange things started happening. My monthly Social Security check, which had always been direct deposited, suddenly stopped coming. When I called the Social Security office, they told me the payments had been redirected to a different account. Michael explained it was a temporary banking optimization and that I shouldn't worry about it. My property tax bill arrived with a past due notice. When I asked Michael about it, he seemed irritated. "I'm handling all that, Dad. Don't micromanage me." The final blow came last month, when I received a foreclosure notice. My house, the house I'd owned for 35 years, the house where I'd raised Michael, was being seized by the bank for non-payment of the mortgage. That's when the truth came crashing down. I drove to Michael's office downtown, that foreclosure notice clutched in my shaking hands. When I walked into his gleaming workspace, I barely recognized the man sitting behind the massive desk. This wasn't the little boy I'd read bedtime stories to, or the teenager I'd cheered for at baseball games. This was a stranger wearing my son's face. "Dad, what are you doing here?" His voice carried annoyance, embarrassment. I placed the foreclosure notice on his desk. "What is this, Michael? What happened to my mortgage payments?" His face went pale, then quickly hardened. "Look, Dad, there were some investment opportunities that required immediate capital. I had to make some quick decisions to maximize your returns." "Investment opportunities? Michael, they're taking my house. It's just temporary. The returns on this deal will more than cover any losses." That's when I realized my son wasn't trying to help me, he was lying to me. All those months of investment updates had been fiction. All those optimizations had been theft. "Where is my money, Michael?" He wouldn't look me in the eye. "I told you, it's invested. You wouldn't understand the complexity of the financial instruments involved. I may not have had a college education, but I wasn't stupid. Show me the statements. Real statements, not pictures on your computer." The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. That evening, I did something I should have done months earlier. I went to the bank myself. What I discovered made my blood run cold. My retirement accounts had been drained. Nearly $200,000, my entire life savings, was gone. The statements Michael had shown me were fabricated. The next day, I confronted him at his house. Jessica answered the door, and I could see expensive new furniture behind her. A massive television, designer handbags scattered on the hall table. "Where's Michael?" I asked. "He's not here," she said, but her voice was nervous. I pushed past her. into the living room, where I found my son playing on what looked like a brand new gaming setup. The pieces suddenly clicked together. Michael hadn't been investing my money, he'd been gambling it away online. All those late nights, he claimed, to be working on my portfolio had actually been spent feeding his addiction to online poker and sports betting. "Dad, you need to leave," Michael said without looking up from his screen. "You stole my life savings to fund your gambling habit. I borrowed it. There's a difference. I'm going to pay it back when my luck turns around." "Your luck, Michael. I'm losing my house." That's when he finally looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes that broke my heart. Complete indifference. "Look, old man, this is the real world. I've got my own family to think about now. Jessica's pregnant, and we need that money more than you do. You had your whole life to prepare for retirement. It's not my fault you didn't save enough." The cruelty of those words hit me like a physical blow. This young man, who had never known hunger because I'd gone without food, who had never worried about college tuition because I'd worked myself to exhaustion, was telling me I hadn't done enough. "I gave you everything," I whispered. "And now it's time for you to step aside. We've already looked into some very nice assisted living facilities. Places where you can get proper care without being a burden on anyone." Burden, there was that word again. That word again. Jessica chimed in from the doorway. "We found one about an hour outside the city. It's not expensive, and they accept Medicaid." They had planned this. While I'd been trusting my son with my financial future, he'd been plotting to steal my independence and warehouse me in some cut-rate nursing home. "You're nothing but dead weight, old man. Nobody wants you around anymore." That's when Michael spoke those words that brought us to this moment, standing in my living room surrounded by boxers, as he and Jessica prepared to evict me from my own home. But here's what Michael didn't know, what Jessica couldn't have imagined, and what I'd never told another living soul: I wasn't as helpless as they thought. You see, my father might have abandoned us when I was 12, but before he left, he taught me one valuable lesson about trust. "Never put all your eggs in one basket, Frankie," he'd told me. "Always have a backup plan." For 40 years, I'd been following that advice, while Michael knew about my 401k and my main savings account. He didn't know about the safety deposit box I'd maintained at a different bank across town. Every month, for decades, I'd put aside a small amount, just $50 at first, then more as my salary increased. It wasn't much each month, but over 40 years, it had grown into something substantial. Inside that safety deposit box were certificates of deposit worth over $300,000. Gold coins I'd collected during the inflation scares of the 1980s, and most importantly, the original deed to my house, which I'd paid off years earlier. Michael might have forged my signature on a second mortgage, but he couldn't steal what he didn't know existed. There was also something else in that box. A letter I'd written to Michael years ago, back when he was still the son I thought I knew. It explained everything. My sacrifices, my hopes for his future, and my plan to leave him everything when I died. That letter now seemed like a relic from another lifetime. As Michael and Jessica continued talking about their plans for my transition to assisted living, I made a decision that would change all of our lives. "I need to make a phone call," I announced. "Dad, there's no point in fighting this. The papers are already signed. You're going to Sunset Manor next week." But I wasn't calling a lawyer, though I probably should have. Instead, I was calling my neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez. Maria Rodriguez had lived next door to me for 15 years. She was a widow like me, but unlike my son, her children visited every Sunday, bringing grandchildren who played in her yard and called her abuela with genuine affection. Over the years, Maria and I had become close friends. She'd brought me soup when I was sick. I'd shoveled her driveway every winter, and we'd shared countless conversations over the fence between our properties. More importantly, Maria had been witnessing Michael's treatment of me for months. She'd seen him arrive in his expensive car, stay for 20 minutes, and leave without even helping me carry groceries inside. She'd heard the arguments through the thin walls of our old houses. "Maria," I said when she answered the phone, "I need your help. Can you come over?" She arrived within minutes, and when she saw the boxes and the cruel satisfaction on Michael's face, her expression hardened. "What's happening here, Frank?" "Michael is trying to steal my house and put me in a nursing home," I said simply. Maria's eyes flashed with anger. She'd raised 5 children as a single mother after her husband died in Vietnam, and she had no patience for children who mistreated their parents. "Jessica, Michael," she said in that voice she probably used when her kids misbehaved, "I think you need to leave. Now, this isn't your business, lady," Jessica snapped. "Any child who would steal from their parent and throw them away like garbage makes it everyone's business." What happened next was something I'll never forget. Maria pulled out her phone and started recording. "State your name for the camera," she told Michael. "I'm not saying anything to you." "Then I'll say it for you. This is Michael Patterson, and he's trying to force his 75-year-old father out of the home where he raised him, after stealing his life savings to fund a gambling addiction." Michael's face went white. In his professional world, reputation was everything. "You can't prove any of that." "Actually," I said, "I can." I walked to my kitchen drawer and pulled out a folder I'd been compiling for weeks. Inside were bank statements showing the systematic withdrawal of funds from my accounts, screenshots of Michael's online gambling history that I'd discovered on his laptop during one of his visits, and most damning of all, a recording I'd made of our conversation the previous day when he'd admitted to borrowing my money. "Michigan is a one-party consent state for recordings," I said. "Everything you told me yesterday about taking my money is admissible in court." The silence that followed was deafening. "You recorded me." Michael's voice cracked. "You stole from me," I replied. "Did you really think there wouldn't be consequences?" That's when Jessica made a crucial mistake. In her panic, she revealed just how much they'd planned this whole scheme. "Michael, what about the insurance papers? What about the will you had him sign?" Michael shot her a look that could have frozen water, but it was too late. Maria was still recording, and now we all knew this went beyond simple theft. They'd been planning to manipulate legal documents to— "What insurance papers?" I asked. "Nothing, Dad. Jessica doesn't know what she's talking about." But I could see the truth in his eyes. While I'd been trusting him with power of attorney, he'd been forging additional documents, probably trying to make himself the beneficiary of my life insurance and manipulating my will. "Maria, I think we need to call the police." "No." Michael's composure finally cracked completely. "Dad, please. I can fix this. I can pay you back. With what money? You gambled it all away." For the first time since this ordeal began, I saw my son cry. Not the crocodile tears of manipulation, but the genuine despair of someone who had finally realized the magnitude of their mistakes. "I have a problem, Dad. I need help. You needed help months ago, before you decided to steal my life savings." Jessica, meanwhile, was frantically gathering her purse and keys. "I'm not going to jail for this," she announced. "Michael, this was your idea. Fix it yourself." And just like that, his devoted fiancée abandoned him the moment their scheme fell apart. I almost felt sorry for him, watching the woman he'd prioritized over his own father flee at the first sign of trouble. But my sympathy only went so far. The police arrived within an hour, and Maria's recording provided all the evidence they needed. Michael was arrested for elder abuse and financial fraud. As they led him away in handcuffs, he kept calling over his shoulder, "Dad, I'm sorry, I'll make this right." But some broken trust can never be fully repaired. The legal proceedings took months, and during that time, something beautiful happened. The story of what Michael had done to me spread through our neighborhood, and I discovered I wasn't as alone as I'd thought. Mrs. Chen from down the street started bringing me homemade dumplings every Tuesday. Her grandson, Tommy, a college student studying computer science, helped me set up online banking so I could monitor my accounts myself. The Kowalski family invited me to their Sunday barbecues, and their children started calling me Grandpa Frank. Most importantly, Maria and I grew even closer. We started having dinner together most evenings, sharing stories about our lives, our lost spouses, and our hopes for the future. Her children and grandchildren began including me in their family gatherings, and for the first time in years, I felt like I truly belonged somewhere. I also met Sarah Kim, a social worker who specialized in elder abuse cases. She helped me navigate the legal system and recover a portion of my stolen money. More importantly, she connected me with other seniors who had experienced similar betrayals from their adult children. Knowing I wasn't alone in this experience was incredibly healing. "The hardest part," said Robert, an 82-year-old man whose daughter had stolen his veterans' benefits, "is accepting that the child you raised no longer exists. The person who hurt you may share their DNA, but they're not the same person you sacrificed." Those words hit me hard because they were absolutely true. The Michael who sat in my kitchen doing homework while I worked night shifts had died somewhere along the way, replaced by a stranger who saw me as nothing more than a source of money. During the trial, Michael's gambling addiction was laid bare for everyone to see. The prosecution presented evidence showing he'd lost over $400,000 in online casinos and sports betting over the past 2 years. My life savings had been just one source of funding for his habit. He'd also stolen from his employer, taken out fraudulent credit cards, and borrowed money from loan sharks. "Your Honor," his court-appointed attorney argued, "my client is sick. Gambling addiction is a recognized mental health condition, and he needs treatment, not imprisonment." The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, wasn't impressed. "Mr. Patterson," she said, "addiction may explain your behavior, but it doesn't excuse it. You systematically stole from the man who raised you, forged legal documents, and attempted to have him declared incompetent so you could control his assets. These weren't impulsive decisions made in the heat of addiction, they were calculated acts of elder abuse." Michael was sentenced to 5 years in prison and ordered to pay full restitution. The judge also mandated that he complete a gambling addiction treatment program and perform community service at a senior center upon his release. As I watched the bailiff lead my son away, I felt an emotion I hadn't expected: relief. For the first time in years, I knew my money was safe. I knew my home was secure. I knew I could make decisions about my own life without worrying about manipulation or theft. But the most surprising part of this whole experience was discovering how much love and support existed in my community. The family I'd lost in Michael, I'd found in a dozen other people who genuinely cared about my well-being. I used some of my recovered savings to renovate my house, updating the kitchen and adding a ramp for when my knees eventually give out. I also established a scholarship fund at the local community college for students studying elder care. hoping to train a new generation of people who would treat seniors with dignity and respect. Maria and I decided to formalize our friendship by becoming roommates. She moved into my spare bedroom, and we split the household expenses. Having someone to cook with, watch movies with, and share daily conversations with has enriched my life in ways I never expected. Frank, she told me recently as we sat on the front porch watching her granddaughter teach the neighborhood kids how to ride bicycles. You know what I think? I think Michael did you a favor. How do you figure that? He forced you to discover how strong you really are, and he cleared the way for you to find your real family. She was right. While Michael had been treating me like a burden to be discarded, people like Maria, the Kowalskis, Mrs. Chen, and Sarah Kim had been showing me what family really meant. True family doesn't see you as an obligation or a source of money. True family celebrates your wisdom, appreciates your stories, and makes sure you feel valued every single day. 6 months after Michael's sentencing, I got a letter from him in prison. It was 12 pages long, filled with apologies, explanations, and promises to change. He begged for forgiveness and asked if I would visit him. I read that letter 3 times, and then I did something that might surprise you. I wrote him back. Not because I was ready to forgive and forget, but because I wanted him to understand the difference between consequences and cruelty. Michael, I wrote, I don't hate you. You're still the little boy I taught to ride a bicycle and helped with homework every night. But you're also the man who stole my life savings and tried to have me declared incompetent. Both of those things can be true at the same time. I hope you get the help you need for your addiction. I hope you learn to make better choices. I hope you find a way to rebuild your life that doesn't involve hurting other people. But I won't be visiting you in prison, and I won't be giving you another chance to steal from me or manipulate me. Some trust, once broken, can't be repaired. When you get out, if you want to have a relationship with me, you'll need to prove through your actions, not your words, that you've changed. And even then, it will be a very different relationship than the one we had before. I'm not angry anymore, son. I'm just sad that it took losing you to realize how much life I still had left to live. I never heard back from him after that letter, and honestly, I was okay with that. These days, my life is fuller than it's been in years. I volunteer at the senior center twice a week, teaching other elderly people how to protect themselves from financial scams. I've started a support group for grandparents who have been cut off from their grandchildren due to family conflicts. Most surprisingly, I've started dating again. Ruth is a 72-year-old retired teacher whose husband passed away 3 years ago. We met at the library during a book club meeting, and we've been having coffee together every Saturday for the past 2 months. She has 2 daughters who live nearby, and they've welcomed me into their family with open arms. You know what I love about you, Frank? Ruth told me last week as we walked through the botanical gardens downtown. You've been through something terrible, but you haven't let it make you bitter. You've let it make you wiser. That's the thing about hitting rock bottom. It gives you a solid foundation to build something new. I learned that real wealth isn't measured in bank account balances or retirement funds. Real wealth is having people in your life who care about your happiness, your health, and your dignity. It's waking up every morning with purpose and going to bed every night feeling valued. Michael took my money, but he couldn't take my spirit. He stole my savings, but he couldn't steal my capacity for joy. He betrayed my trust, but he couldn't prevent me from building new relationships based on mutual respect and genuine affection. If there's a lesson in all of this, it's that family isn't just about blood relations. Family is about the people who show up for you when you need them most, who celebrate your successes and support you through your failures, who see your worth even when others try to diminish it. Today, as I sit in my renovated kitchen with Maria, cooking her famous tamales, while Ruth helps me plan our next book club selection, I can honestly say I'm happier now than I was when Michael was pretending to love me while stealing my future. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that could have happened to you. Sometimes losing the family you thought you had is the only way to find the family you actually need. And sometimes learning to stand up for yourself at 75 years old is exactly the right time to start living your best life. What would you do in a situation like this? Have you experienced or witnessed something similar in your own family? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might help someone else facing a difficult family situation. If this story resonated with you, consider subscribing for more real-life stories about resilience, family relationships, and finding strength in unexpected places. From which city are you listening to us today?